Have you ever had a brilliant idea for a fabric, but then you hit a wall, wondering, how do I actually get this thing made? Well, today we're going to break down that whole process using a real guide from a real manufacturer to get you from idea to actual fabric.
Right? The perfect pattern, the exact texture. It's all crystal clear in your head. But turning that sketch or that digital file into a roll of fabric you can touch and feel, that's a whole different ballgame. And it all starts with one single crucial acronym, and there it is. MOQ, minimum order quantity. This is the big one. It's the gatekeeper that decides whether your project gets a green light. It's the absolute smallest amount a factory is willing to make for you, and trust me, understanding this number is step one to making your vision a reality. So, what do these MOQs actually look like in the real world? As you're about to see, these numbers can swing wildly, and it all comes down to the kind of fabric you're dreaming up. Okay, so to make this super clear, we're going to be looking at a real guide from a company called Fabric Diary. This is exactly the kind of document you'd receive if you were inquiring about production. It lays out all the rules of the game, right from the start. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because you'll see how your creative choices directly slam into the business side of things. The biggest thing that's going to affect your MOQ, it's the type and the complexity of the fabric you want to create. And boom, this table breaks it all down beautifully. Just look at the top. Simple, plain fabrics. Incredibly accessible. You can start with just 20 meters. But as you go down the list and add complexity, like custom digital prints or those fancy jacquard weaves, those minimums just shoot up. The big takeaway here is your design ambition has a direct cost in meters. Think about that. 20 meters. That's your most accessible entry point. It's your foot in the door. It's perfect for a small batch, a test run, or a super limited edition drop. It really proves you don't need a massive budget to get started. And then you have the other end of the spectrum. 500 meters or more. Whoa, that is the kind of commitment you need for highly specialized stuff, like a jacquard weave. That involves a really complex and time-consuming setup on the loom for every single design. That jump from 20 to 500, it perfectly shows the massive range you're dealing with. So this brings us to the next big fork in the road. It's a huge decision. Do you use one of the manufacturer's existing ready designs, or do you create something from scratch that's 100% yours? And this just lays out the trade-offs perfectly, doesn't it? Choosing a ready design gets you lower minimums and it's way faster. But going custom, you get complete creative control, something that's uniquely yours. It just requires a bigger commitment, a higher MOQ, and more setup time. It's that classic choice. Do you want speed and lower cost, or do you want total originality? Okay, so you've picked your fabric, you've decided between a ready design or a custom one. What actually happens next? Let's walk through the nitty-gritty timeline and the costs involved in getting from that first test run to your final bulk order. So you've got to be patient here, because the process is split into two clear phases. First up is sampling, which can take 15 to 20 working days. This is where you get an actual, physical test piece to approve. Once you give that the big green light, the full production run kicks off. And that takes another 15 to 25 working days. So all in, you should probably budget about 2 months from start to finish. But before any of that can happen, you'll need to pay a sample charge. Honestly, you should think of this as a deposit to show you're serious. It basically covers the manufacturer's initial costs for the setup, the materials, and the labor to create that one-off sample just for you. Now this is a really key detail you can't miss. You're actually going to get quoted two different prices. The price per meter for the sample is higher. And that makes sense because it reflects the cost of a tiny one-time run. The final production price per meter is lower because you get the benefit of economy of scale when you're producing in bulk. So you're probably wondering, what happens to that sample charge? Well, if you decide to go ahead with the full order, that 5,000 rupees gets credited back to you. But, and this is important, it's applied against the higher sample price first. Whatever is left over after that gets applied to your final bill. And if you decide not to proceed, that fee is non-refundable, which is pretty standard practice. You're almost there. You've approved the sample, you're ready to go big. The final step is locking in your full production run. And that, of course, means understanding how you're going to pay for it. To get the machines rolling, you'll pay in advance, usually between 25 and 50% of the total cost. This lets the manufacturer buy all the raw materials and schedule your production. Then, the remaining balance is due right when your beautiful new fabric is all packed up and ready to ship out to you. And there you have it. That's the whole shebang. MOQs, sample fees, production timelines, payment terms. It might sound like a lot of boring business jargon, but these numbers, this is the language of manufacturing, and understanding them is what builds the bridge between a brilliant idea and a product you can actually hold in your hands.
So the process is demystified. The playbook is right here. The path from a concept to a finished roll of fabric is all laid out. Now that you know the rules of the game, what would you bring to life?